morning. My name is Karen Yvon, and I will be moderating this session. And I would first like to thank and welcome our panelists for the day. So we have with us Lilka Cuttaree. If you can still wave a little bit. Yes, thank you. We have Pooja Luchmun Maulloo, who is there. Hi, Pooja. And we have Her Excellency Dr. Kate O'Shaughnessy from the High Commissioner from Australia for Mauritius. Hi, thank you for joining us. So before we get started, I'll just set the context a little bit. This webinar is part of a series that is being held as part of the Business Without Borders program, which started last year and is a program that is in its third phase. It's a program that is being funded by the Australian High Commission and the AMFCE. And as part of the Business Without Borders program, there has been a series of webinars and podcasts, which are currently, which have been completed already. And this is the last, if I'm not mistaken, the last webinar of the series, which I'm very excited to have as it's about leadership, which is a topic that is very fascinating to me. And I'm very thankful to have the panel that we have today. So just to give you a bit of background about our panelists, so Lilka Cuttaree is the director of the KIP Center for Leadership and the JKC Foundation. She's the former director of the Economic Development Board, and she launched in Mauritius a number of startups in the area of executive education, consulting, and social impact, with specific expertise on economic development, public-private partnership, leadership, and women empowerment programs. It's a large array of skills there. An active promoter of gender equality and continuous learning. She created in 2018, with support from Harvard University, the Blossom Initiative to empower women and girls in the region. Lilka holds a Master in Economics from the University of Paris-Dauphine, an MBA from Sciences Po Paris, and an MPA from the Harvard Kennedy School. Welcome, Lilka. Pooja, so I would like to kindly ask those who are joining us to please turn off their mics. Thank you. Pooja Luchmun Maulloo has been practicing as a barrister-at-law at the Bar of the Republic of Mauritius for more than 5 years. She is specialized in employment law and intellectual property. She regularly engages in court litigation and provides representations before various tribunals and committees. Pooja further provides legal advice to local nonprofit organizations and associations. In addition to her legal practice, Pooja is a fervent social activist militating for the rights of women and combating domestic violence as well as sexual harassment in Mauritius in her professional and personal capacity. We're very happy to have you with us, Pooja. And Her Excellency Dr. Kate O'Shaughnessy is a career officer with the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and was most recently Deputy Director at the Western Australia State Office. She has previously served overseas in Ghana and joined the team in Mauritius last year, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Dr. O'Shaughnessy holds a PhD and a Bachelor of Honors from the University of Western Australia. Thank you so much, Yvon, Your Excellency, for joining us today. How are you all doing?
Great, fine.
Yes, awesome. So we're here to talk about leadership. As I mentioned, so the Black Business Without Borders program was specifically geared towards women entrepreneurs. And so the focus of this discussion will be very turned towards women in leadership positions in their professional capacity, but we also have leadership in our day-to-day lives. So feel free to chime in about anything that has to do with being a woman in today's world and being a woman leader in today's world. We'll start with the first question. The question is one that will hopefully set a little bit of background on the difference between informal and formal leadership. And the question is very simple, was there a specific moment in your careers when you realized that you were a leader? Did it happen when you reached a formal position, or did it happen before? So we'll start with Lilka for this one.
So I think, thank you, Karen. Thank you for everyone for your presence today. I think this definition of a leader is intimately linked to inspiration and community building. So, and by community, it is a very large term. It can be your family, your friends, your colleague, your church, even a nation, if we are talking about public leadership. What it implies really is that people are ready to give up things they hold dear, like daily habits, loyalty, ways of thinking to follow your journey. And I think in return of this type of sacrifice, you may be offered nothing more than the possibility of a better future. So why I'm making this little introduction is like in my own situation, I was more, I think, of a shy character when I was a teenager. And I don't think I even had a soft or silent type of leadership. So I would say I realized about leadership skills at a very much more mature stage of my life when I was in a formal position, because you're talking about formal and informal leadership, formal position of director in a big parastatal organization. And like many other colleagues, especially women executives, we saw that we had to put aside our personal family goals to work for the common good. And as a working mom with very small kids, traveling at short notice, and having within my team members on the same journey, we really bonded through common stories. So, so that's what I want to say about formal and informal leadership, is that you need to differentiate a leader from authority, what I call formal leadership. You can have a title, but doesn't mean that you're a leader. And for example, in my situation, a lot of women staff told me much later, when I was even part of this organization, that they found inspiration and drive in just seeing me as a role model. So I think this aspect of leadership is intimately linked to inspiration.
Thank you. And Dr. Kate O'Shaughnessy, could we have your take on this question, please?
Thanks, Karen, for the question, which I love this question actually, because in my experience, I've always felt internally that I am a leader, that I have leadership capabilities, which for me were about a consultative style, care for colleagues, a real clarity of purpose about my organisation's goals and my role within it. What is interesting is that until recently, under a Women in Leadership strategy in my organisation, I wasn't formally a leader in my organisation. I was very, very junior in my organisation until 5 years ago, and I shared that experience with most other women colleagues. What was transformative was that my organisation started to recognise that there are different types of leadership, that leadership is not only masculine, it's not only people making solo decisions and being aggressively forceful, although that can be a style of leadership that is needed sometimes for certain decisions and situations. But if that's the only style of leadership in your organisation that you have, then you're really in trouble. And part of the Women in Leadership strategy that my organisation started in 2016 was about acknowledging diverse styles of leadership, and that you can have leadership at every level, that each person has their own style, which may be more suited to one scenario than another. That recognition enabled me and many of my other women colleagues to get promotions to the point where I was eligible to be a High Commissioner, or another colleague was eligible to be an ambassador. This was a big transformation, that the organisation's understanding of leadership started to align with my own view of what leadership skills I had to offer.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that you as a person, you felt that you had what it took to be a leader. You felt that you were already setting up the teams in the way that you wanted it to go, and that you had this vision of yourself that was as a leader, but it wasn't formally recognized until a little bit later. And it wasn't, did you feel that it was when the organization recognized diversity, the possibility of diversity in leadership, that you felt that you were acknowledged as a leader?
Exactly. And I think that would be the experience of so many of the women logging in today, that you may feel that you have something to offer, and you absolutely do, but the organisation hasn't, or your colleagues haven't kind of reached that point where they can see the value of that diversity. So I would say to everyone who's dialed in, don't be discouraged. You definitely have something to offer, and it will be recognised.
So in these first two answers, we have Lilka, who had an experience in which she didn't feel like she was a leader until it was formally recognized. And we have somebody who felt that they were a leader much before they were recognized as such by the organization in which they were in. Pooja, what has been your experience in terms of how feeling like a leader, if that can be said?
So, well, coming to this question, I have to say that it got me really thinking. To be able to answer and to really see when did I really become a leader, or realize that I was a leader. I had to ask myself, firstly, what is meant by being a leader? So what is meant by someone who is leading? What is leading? So is it someone who is an organizer, or is it someone who is a problem solver, someone who has all the answers to all the questions, or someone who knows what to do all the time? Or is she a challenger of established beliefs and behaviors? So after reflecting on it, I would define a leader by being someone who knows her own capabilities and her own weaknesses. So someone who helps others to know theirs as well. That would be a leader with a purpose. So someone who knows where she's going, in which direction she's taking her business or her movement or her project, her cause. She who has a sense of direction. And someone who, and this I'm basing it on my personal experience from what I've learned as well, is someone who is able to choose her team members according to the core values, the core principles, and the vision of her business. So under my perception of who is a leader, I would say that I have become a leader way before joining a formal position. I've been a leader to myself first. So this is where I started. Leading myself in the way that I had to do introspective works and see where do I want to be later, and how do I make myself go there, lead myself along the way. And then thereafter, I found myself being a leader to my family members first, and then to my friends, and then to my peers, and now to anyone who would be asking help from me. I'm still learning, and I'm still getting better every day along this leadership path. I take the tips, any training that I can get, like the leadership module in the Business Without Borders program. And this is basically how I see the leadership way, actually, always getting better for yourself and getting better for everyone around you. So yes, this would be my answer to this question. Thank you.
Thank you. So you touched upon a few different things. We'll get back to one thing that you mentioned about being there for others, and I believe one of the things as a female leader we'll talk about it, managing that and the way people are seeing you as a woman who is leading and who is offering help without it being perceived as too much, as offering too much. But before we get there, I did want to jump on the question that was raised a little bit by Lilka and was touched upon by your answer, which is the difference between management and leadership. So what differentiates these two terms, first of all, in the way that you understand it, and how you have applied this difference, or how are you struggling, if you are at all, with this difference in your day-to-day professional lives? We'll start with Dr. Kate O'Shaughnessy.
I love actually all of your questions, Karen. I think this is a really good one. And I think it's a really good question for women leaders, actually, because so often before we get to our leadership role, we've been in a role where we're doing the managing of all the things and making everything happen and getting it done and keeping everyone happy, and moving into a leadership role like the one I'm in now, or the roles that Pooja and Lilka have. You have to step away a little bit from the logistics and the details, and that can be hard if you've built a career on doing everything. To me, it's really, the distinction is between details and big picture. And for me, that the leader is steering the ship towards an overall objective and having trust that all of the people in the team are going to do all the things to get you there. But you, as a leader, have less of a role in the doing and more of a role in those kinds of things that Lilka talked about, inspiring others, or that Pooja talked about as well, making people feel good about being in the team and wanting to go on the journey with you. Thanks.
That is a very good point on detail versus big picture. Is that something that you can unlearn when you've been focused so much on the technical? Let's say you're a technician. I'm going to take a very simple example. Let's say you're somebody who's used to doing everything in your business, and you have to take the step back as well. And is that something that you can unlearn, how to be detail oriented and wanting to control every little thing and managing every little thing, to taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture?
I'm unlearning it right now, in fact.
Okay.
This is my first High Commissioner role, and all of my previous roles have been either as the deputy or supporting the key leader. And it's been a real learning process in this first year. And I think it's one that absolutely we can all do that. And that's part of our whole life journey of learning and adapting. But I won't lie, it's been hard. It's hard to let go.
And Lilka, what is your experience of the difference between leadership and management in that sense?
I think the main difference between leadership and management is that leaders are not necessarily in a management position. A little bit what I said before, that I call in a position of authority. And the approach of a leader is very different for success, because you need to understand the values of each member of your team. And a little bit to be aligned with what Kate was saying, you also need to understand, to have like the broader picture, to understand the system in which all the members are connected, so that you can find their own values, their purpose, to be able to craft common goals and vision. And this is sometimes very different from management goal. So, and even in terms of skills, the skills also required from a leader are very different from a management. We are talking more about empathy, authenticity, passion, humility. This is coming up as very important skills for leaders nowadays. Bring especially adaptability and change from inside, while a manager is very much more involved in day-to-day issues and will have to fix it, whether using authority or expertise. So it's very different type of role, I would say.
Okay, so you're distinguishing between sort of the approach that to problem solving in a way. So the leader would take a sort of a longer journey to changing things, whereas the manager is more in like urgent. Let's try to solve this thing right now, this operational or organizational issue that we have right now. Whereas a leader has more of a long-term understanding and vision of how to bring about change and how to make people the best out of the people on the teams. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Pooja, what is your take on this?
Yes. So my take matches slightly Dr. Kate's, and I'm speaking from the from the position of an entrepreneur, of a young entrepreneur with a rather small team. So where the roles are not that distinct, I would say that when it comes to leadership and management, both are intertwined, and both for me should be intertwined. Again, I'm speaking from my position, my perspective. I believe that any position that gives you a certain kind of power or control over other people necessitates that you develop and effectively use both leadership and managerial skills. I'll explain. Ideally, a manager would also be a leader to her team players, so her immediate team, and effectively using both leadership and management would mean giving instructions for the way forward, so the way to the path to follow, and allowing, for this I'll join Dr. Keats, so allowing the employee or the team member to carry out these instructions in the best way suited to them, because what really matters is the ultimate goal, so the result, the success. Whereas pure management, as we've seen for I think for decades, it's quite the conventional management system. It's mostly about telling people what to do, where to do, how to do it, and then after giving those instructions, and then being there and supervising the person. So leadership is quite it goes further. So it's actually trusting the person you're working with to carry out the task you've assigned to her or him in the best way possible, keeping in mind the best interest of the business or the project or the movement. So in this way, following this kind of hybrid system, you're able to make the most of everyone's capabilities, because everyone is different. And at the same time, you as a leader, you're learning to delegate. This has been quite a little bit tough for me as well, to let go of the control and have to look at the details and trust my team players. But then this is something that you have to do, and trust that the people that you have chosen to do the task, that they will do it properly and even better than you are able to do it. So I think that would be a hybrid of leadership and management would be ideal, in my opinion.
Yeah, for what you're saying, I completely understand, but it's very hard, and I'm sure people who are listening today will have had the same sort of experience, where it's very hard when you've developed the optimal, or what you think is the optimal way of doing something, and allowing somebody to make the mistakes that you know they will make, and not giving them the answer. It's very hard. It's a very hard balance that you're discussing. Have you had any tips? You know, because I'm thinking about people who are watching this today and who may have troubled with the trust part of this leadership journey that we're discussing. And I think it's important to just stop here for 1 second and see if you have any tips on being the one who is able to tell others what is the goal, what is the vision, and allowing them to figure out the how on their own, and how you manage to sort of let go and not try to check every day that the way they have taken is the right one. Do you have any tips or ways that you've seen other people do it that would be useful to the ones who are listening to us today?
Yes, actually, what's also working for me, I'm still there. I'm still like I said, learning every day. But one thing is to provide some kind of support system for the team players and to give them the coaching and the training that you had yourself or that you think that they should have in order to bring forward the vision that you have for the company. So the moment that your team players understand where you're going, they'll believe you and they'll believe in the movement as well. And then they will take decisions with regards to the best interest of the business. And then slowly, by trusting that system that you've put in place yourself, then it would be easier for you to breathe and have some patience as well, and just letting them grow. I see it like it, and this is the way that it's working for me.
Okay, Lilka, any tips on this question?
I think it's to join what Pooja is saying. It's very much about, it's a very challenging balance, because there's a concept of accountability in that is put on someone at the top to at the end of the day you need to get things done. That's why I say it's a problem of I wanted to define the time horizon between a leader and a manager. So I think but to sum a little bit what I wanted to say, I think once and from also my own experience of to have come from big organization to startup level, where actually you need to inspire even more the team to follow you, because you have a problem of attracting good talent in your organization. So I think it's very important to understand the values of each member, not to repeat myself, and to understand why they are here, and to acknowledge that maybe the work is not going to be exactly to the standard that you were expecting, that what a manager is more focused on, but you need to be prepared to jump when need be, but at the same time give them the space for them to flourish and to go through their own transformative journey. And for that, it's really about empowerment, but making sure that you are around and you are providing safe space for discussion when things are not working properly.
Okay. And Dr. O'Shaughnessy, relating to time and you joined a new team, you were floated in onto a new team last year, and having the time to actually set up the systems that we've been discussing. Is that something that has been doable, or how have you answered or managed, or have you any tips on how to do what was just discussed by the panelists?
I mean, my workplace is quite unique, right? Because in an embassy, you will have a cohort of locally engaged staff who very often have been with the team for many years. So in my case, some of them have been with us for more than 20 years. And so every 3 years, they get a cycle of a new High Commissioner who might have kind of different objectives. So the biggest lesson for me actually was to stop and not do anything, sit back and learn from, because I have a really expert team. I'm never going to be an expert about Mauritius in the way that my team is. So just stopping and listening and learning from the team has been really helpful for me, actually. I have a clear sense of the outcomes that we need in terms of Australian government priorities, but how we get there has to be totally adapted to the local context, and listening and consulting has been so important in allowing that to unfold in a natural way. So sometimes doing less helps you get there quicker than doing a lot is my tip.
Okay, well that is actually very useful. So just to summarize a little bit on what was discussed, some of the skills that would be useful in leading teams would be to sort of make the time to listen and trust, to hear, to understand the why, as Lilka was saying, why people are there and what has driven them, and seeing how the drive that they have can be used to achieve the goals that you are setting for the organization that you have, as talking about trust and taking the time to train and to set up a system in which trust exists and in which you are able to let go a little bit. And so I just wanted to switch gears just a little bit from teams, because in the Business Without Borders program and in the AMFCE, there are quite a few women who are working on their own. So leadership is usually associated with teams and managing teams. But I wanted to ask about leading when you are on your own and how to be a leader for yourself, essentially. And basically the themes that I would love to touch upon on this question is, perseverance and self-advocacy. Like, how do we get leaders, women, to talk and to look for what they need, both in themselves and in others who may not be, whose salary do not depend on the person who's asking. And that is something that a lot of people struggle with in Mauritius. So I will start with Pooja on this question.
Yes, thank you. So for all the kind participants who've heard me from the beginning, so you know that you can definitely be a leader on your own. Well, being a leader does not necessarily prerequisite that you have people to lead. Like it happened for me. You may well start by leading yourself, that taking that leadership path by yourself first. What does it mean? How do I do that? So essentially, it means doing for yourself what you would have done for a close friend. So in this case, it's you, the close friend. So how would you empower yourself? And this is the start of my journey. Actually, it's knowing yourself, knowing where you want to go. You have to have that vision, and so you know in which direction to go. So to be able to empower yourself, you should give yourself all the tools to progress, all the tools to ultimately succeed, to move forward step by step towards your ultimate goal. My tips would be to read the good books. What I did, to read the good books, to have the good advice. Don't be afraid of asking other women leaders for advice, for their own experience, for their own journey. In this way, you will know through time what works for you and what does not. And this is very important, especially when you go forward forming a team. So you would know how to handle situations, for example, by knowing where you stand first. Then you know where can you give some leeway, or which are those principles where you're going to say, no, I can't move from this. So really, this is knowing your purpose in leadership. And then the skills that you ultimately develop and that are precious for any leader would be resilience, would be perseverance, and patience, with yourself, patience with the process. I would say compassion also for yourself. Just you're being like, you're doing great. Just keep going. And I'll emphasize on resilience. So yes, that'd be my short take on it. I think you
Sorry, I muted myself. Sorry. Dr. O'Shaughnessy, did we lose? I think we might have lost her. Lilka, what is your take on this question as being a leader for yourself and what it means to be a leader for yourself?
Of course, so to continue on the same perspective as Pooja, of course, you can be a leader even when you work on your own, actually. And I think working on your own, becoming an entrepreneur is a very interesting personal journey, because sometimes you're, especially as a woman, you're running around, you don't have even time for personal reflection. So sometimes being on your own will allow you to know yourself better. Sometimes you don't even know your level of resilience or optimism, whether it's in the face of adversity or the challenge that you're facing, whether you thought you would get support from your inner circle and you're not getting it. You know, so you need to stand still and be the master of your own life. You cannot think that someone else is going to you're the last person on the line as a leader, whether you're on your own or not. And this is something I've learned the most out of a journey of entrepreneur. Then the second thing, especially when you're starting, most of the time you can't even afford to build a team. You need to count only on your own resource. And then you need to define the system in which you're operating. So it's not how are you going to secure your first contract? And you need really to understand the stakeholder and allies who are the ones that are going to help you, and how you can inspire them and impact on them. So it's a little bit different from the approach, but I think as a leader, whether you're on your own or with a team, you absolutely need to understand the system in which you're operating. And then all the skill that have been mentioned are absolutely necessary, including how you can develop self-confidence. Sometimes we are afraid to take risk, you know, especially because there's a body of research done on women. We like to mitigate risk, you know, so we need, as an entrepreneur or as a business on your own, to be able to control these fears so that you can emerge as a leader. So this is a little bit the tips that I want to say. You need to know yourself well, and you need to believe in yourself.
Okay. Before we move, I wanted to take on, we have two questions from the floor in the chat right now. I'm going to take the second one first, and then we'll move on to the first one. So we have a question that is asking how to handle a situation where you are in a managerial position, but not accepted as a leader, in the sense that your decisions are always questioned. You face resistance in relation to implementation, and any advice or tips in this kind of situation. Dr. O'Shaughnessy, maybe? You've faced such a situation?
I have so much empathy for this question, because it's something that as a female leader, I experience this all the time, including in Australia, particularly working with stakeholders in certain traditionally male-dominated sectors. Mining is one that comes to mind. And I don't have an easy answer to that, because you can't bang your head against the wall every day trying to convince your colleagues that you have as much right to be in the room as anyone else. Something that I'm really keen to work on here in Mauritius, and indeed in Australia when I get back is to open up this conversation about the role that men have to play in women's leadership. I think there is a great deal of importance in the notion of men understanding that they have unconscious biases towards women. It's not that they're nasty people necessarily, but we've all been shaped by the patriarchy and are making decisions in the workplace that discriminate against women. I don't think the individual woman is able to solve this, but I think nationally, Mauritius and Australia, we mutually need to open up those conversations more to get men to accept that women have a role at the table. But I think I absolutely sympathise with that feeling of people not taking you seriously and resisting your contributions. It's very hard and it's very unfair.
And Lilka, do you have any input on this question?
I think it is, as Kate has said, it is a reality. I mean, we are, like in Mauritius, a lot of biases. We have this thing about the coffee syndrome, like when you're in a meeting, if you're the only woman, they will ask you whether you can make the coffee. So you have always these bias. So even myself, when I was in senior job, I saw that, and I was turning to a male staff and saying, "Can you make that coffee?" Just to give a signaling to the other people that why should I be the one doing the coffee? So there's a lot of biases. But it's not something specific to Mauritius. I would say it's a global problem. But saying that, I think there are two things that I would like to share. First of all, I think you need to build allies. Should it be men or should it be with women? I think this is the key for women to succeed. Very often among women, although I know we'll talk maybe a little bit about that, but we have this queen bee syndrome. There's not enough space for women to emerge in leadership position, and we cannot collaborate so much. I think this needs to change. Very often, even at my level, we try to build a number of networking events among women, and this is the way forward. There's enough space for all women to emerge in this country, and we need to start collaborating. So this is, and with men also, it is extremely important if we want to change these biases that we involve the men in this process. And secondly, I think more on practical term, we need sometimes women to take a step back. You know, you won't be able to change mindset from inside in organization or in society, but you can take a step back, be on the balcony kind of thing, so that you can see what is going on and come back. So this is a little bit the approach I tend to adopt when I see situation like that. Take a step back, reflect on what's going on, understand the system in which you're operating, and then come back.
Okay, thank you. It's interesting, both your answers though, even though it wasn't mentioned, both your answers assumed that the questioning was coming from male counterparts. But very often women themselves question other women in their positions, in their decision-making process. I did want to put in the second question, but to Pooja, and if you want to add anything on the first question while you're answering the second one, that's no problem. So the second question is how decision-making as a leader has changed. That is a question from the floor. There's a bit of a pretext before that. It's just the main question is, I'd be interested to hear from the panel on how they see decision-making as a leader. How has their decision-making abilities changed? Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to jump back on the first question. First, I'd like to add something to it. Given when I'm speaking from my experience in the legal field, which has for a long time been a man-dominated world. So it has been very difficult to get your voice out first, and then get your voice across the table. So have the others hear you and listen to you, and don't take you for someone who doesn't know what she's saying. So I wouldn't be able to say for the other fields, but what worked in the long run for me was I had to be more assertive. And if I had, like, I'm taking everything that has been said by Dr. Kate and Lilka. So knowing your subject, knowing your decision plan, being confident about it, and then being able to express why is it the good way. So then I'd be coming with my facts and my analysis, and I'd be saying, this is why it's going to work, and this is why you'll have to do it, and this is the way that we're going forward. So let's try it for some time, and then if you have some qualms about it, you come to me, we'll have another meeting, we'll speak about it. But for now, this is how it's going to be, and we'll go this way, and see how it works. So this would be for the first question from my personal experience. Now coming to decision making, yes, my decision making strategy has changed immensely since also becoming entrepreneur and really working with a versatile team. It's the ick for me was to remember that taking everyone's considerations on board is a game changer, in that they feel that they've been heard, even if it doesn't influence your initial decision, but thinking that they've been heard, it does help. I'm taking here for an example of a decision that I'm taking for the business, and that has impact on the way that people will be working, for example. So, and then it comes to what I've said earlier about knowing your purpose and always having in mind where you're going. So all your decisions will ultimately be linked to your ultimate goal. So you'll do everything in the best interest of the business. And having that pool of advice and brainstorming first for especially an important decision, business-related decision, does help. It gives you vision, and it gives you the perception from all types. You have the bigger picture, that's it. So at the start, I was used to, control. So I have this in mind, this is my decision, I'm gonna take it, wherever agree or not. But then with time, I realized that it's not the most reasonable thing to do, especially in business. So it's good to have other points of views, and then assembling all of them, thinking, doing the pros and cons, and then you'll find the best decision for your goal.
Okay, thank you. So we actually, I knew that there would be more questions than time to answer them. So it's now 3:56. We don't have a lot of time, so this will be the last question, but it's interesting because Evelyn Burns asked the question that was also on the list that I had, which are, who are your mentors and in leadership? Who are the leaders that you admire, and what are the most memorable lessons that you have heard? So my question was, who is someone that you identify as a good leader, and what is it that you think makes them a good leader? So if we can, maybe we'll conclude with that, and if in the meantime, I'm not sure we can go very much beyond 4 o'clock. So thank you again, and I'll let you conclude on this question. We'll start with Dr. O'Shaughnessy.
Thanks, Karen. And let me answer this very quickly. One of the most influential leaders in my career was a male supervisor who early in my career told me, I see that you never speak in meetings and you're always quiet. And I want to tell you that just because people sound authoritative doesn't mean that they know more than you, or even that they know very much about what they're talking about. You are good at your job. You need to have confidence to speak up. Don't be afraid. That was a pretty pivotal moment in my career, and I'm still grateful to him for seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. So I think that's a lesson to all of us. You never know what your words of encouragement could mean to a junior colleague. He was pretty influential.
Thank you. Lilka?
For me, it was maybe the executive director of one of the big companies I was working in, Barrister-at-Law organization, and immense CEO. But I think what I liked about him is like he was very inclusive in his approach. He never saw me as a woman, you know. He decided he would promote me irrespective of where I was coming from, and he gave me everything I needed to perform, should it be in terms of resource, in terms of trust, and he was at the same time very humble, you know, very humble in situation where actually he could be the one on the front line. He was giving space for me to groom and to interact with influential people. And I'm extremely grateful for the chance he gave me, because he built a lot of the self-confidence I have today. And yes, and I do believe I've been working, it's true, in terms of pattern, I've been working a lot with male CEOs, and I must say that I found that extremely fruitful to have learned from them, you know. And but at the same time, as I said, they never treated me as a woman. They really value the work I was doing.
Okay. And Pooja, thank you for that, Lilka.
Yes. Isn't it interesting how all our influential leaders are actually men? So mine is my father, actually. He was a member of the police force, and he then joined the UN as peacekeeper. So now, even more than a decade after he passed away, people still talk about his incredible leadership. So he's remembered for being this extremely smart, motivational, inspiring, kind-hearted, disciplined person. This leader in the army, in the police. He's been in all those roles, and never yelling at his subordinates unreasonably, never getting that kind of angry, and always seeing the positive in everyone that he meets. So, and pushing everyone to do the best that they can, to be the best versions of themselves. And so what he always told me was that you always get what you deserve, and you work hard and you do your work with a smile, and it will be all right. So I'm ending with this.
What a great way to end. Thank you very much, ladies, for your presence, and thank you everyone who has been listening in on this webinar. I think Marie-Noëlle might request that we turn on our cameras for a photo. It has been really interesting to talk about just specific words that we, and while you're doing that, I will just conclude, and just really maybe the thing that we need to be working towards is that the next time there is a webinar on leadership, there'll be mentors or people that we admire that are women leaders that we have seen around and who have inspired us to be leaders. So thank you again for your time and for your sharing your vision of what a leader is and how we can sharing concrete steps on how we can integrate leadership as a part of our lives and of who we are and how we interact with others specifically. Because I think there was in what was mentioned, even in what Pooja said about being assertive, there's being assertive without needing to be aggressive, and you can still get your way without having to come across as if you're shutting down somebody else. So taking the time to stop and listen, as Lilka said, to what was being said, take the time to encourage, as Dr. Shaughnessy was saying, and taking the time to step back from what we're seeing, the immediate fires that will have to be taken out in order to really understand where we're going and how we're going to get there, and giving the time and the freedom to others to take the way that they need to. So thank you again for all of these insights.